In this video, let's take a closer look at how the fairy godmother managed to take over and control everything in the kingdom of Far Far Away during the events of Shrek 2. Most villains try to take power by using physical strength or an army, but she was different because she used a very complicated and sneaky plan that combined business, magic, and blackmail. To really understand how she became so powerful, you have to look back at her secret history with King Harold. It turns out that Harold wasn't always a human king. He started out as the Frog Prince. In order to marry Queen Lillian and get the crown, he had to make a very risky deal with the fairy godmother. She gave him a magical potion that turned him into a human man, but he had to pay a very high price for that favor. The deal was that their first daughter, Fiona, had to eventually marry the fairy godmother's son, Prince Charming.
You see, we made a deal, Harold, and I assume you don't want me to go back on my part.
Indeed not.
So Fiona and Charming will be together.
A lot of people who watch the movie closely think that the fairy godmother might have been the actual person who put the curse on Fiona when she was a baby. If she was the one who cursed Fiona to turn into an ogre at night, it would make sense because it allowed her to set up a situation where the princess was locked in a tower. That way, her son Charming would be the only one who could go and heroically rescue her, which would automatically make him the next king. Beyond just her deal with Harold, the fairy godmother also had a massive amount of economic and social power over the entire kingdom. She basically ran a monopoly on magic. She owned a giant potion factory that was more like a huge industrial plant than a magical workshop. In that factory, she manufactured every kind of magic you could think of, ranging from simple happily ever after spells to massive force of nature potions. Because she produced all the magic, she was the one who got to decide what a proper fairy tale was supposed to look like. She controlled the way everyone in the kingdom thought about romance and happy endings. On top of that, she had absolutely no respect for King Harold at all. She treated him poorly because she knew that without her help, he would still be a frog in a pond.
I helped you with your happily ever after, and I can take it away just as easily. Is that what you want? Is it?
She felt like she owned him because she was the reason he had his life and his throne. Because of that secret, she could make him do whatever she wanted, which gave her complete control over the royal family and the entire city. When you look at everything she did in the movie, her main goal was basically to break up Shrek and Fiona by any means necessary. She spent a lot of time trying to get inside Shrek's head and make him feel insecure about his relationship. She kept telling him, both directly and indirectly, that an ogre and a princess could never actually be happy together and that he was just standing in the way of Fiona's true happily ever after.
But I love her.
If you really love her, you'll let her go.
She was using a lot of emotional manipulation to make him feel like he didn't belong in that world. Her plan was to get Shrek out of the picture so that her son Prince Charming could step in and marry Fiona instead. For her, this wasn't really about her son's happiness, it was just a way for her to get even more power and influence over the kingdom. As long as she ended up with more control, she didn't really care who got hurt or whose lives she ruined. In the end, her entire plan fell apart because of one specific thing she didn't expect, which was that King Harold would eventually feel guilty and listen to his conscience. He was supposed to give Fiona a tea that contained a love potion to make her fall in love with Charming, but at the very last second, he decided to swap the cups so she wouldn't drink it. When the fairy godmother realized that her plan had failed and that Fiona still loved Shrek, she got extremely angry and tried to use her magic wand to just blast Shrek and get rid of him forever. However, Harold jumped in front of the blast to save Shrek. Because he was wearing a suit of metal armor, the magical beam ended up bouncing right off of him and hitting the fairy godmother instead. The magic was so strong that it turned her into a bunch of floating bubbles, and that was the end of her. She thought she had thought of everything, but she didn't realize that the person she was bullying would eventually stand up to her.